Well, good afternoon. My name is Ken Cooley, and I am the founder of the City of Rancho, and it's an honor to be here with you today. I appreciated Amber's rendition of that, our national anthem. Sort of reminds us to think about that song. Life stood in the balance in a moment when that song was being written. 11 years ago, life was standing in the balance. And today we are in a great election to kind of set the course of our country. And that applies at the legislature and even nationally. So this part of America is the renewal of democracy. The towers are down, but what makes the fiber of America is still strong. We're participating in it today. I'm a 35-year resident here in Sacramento County, and it's where my wife and I made our home in the second year of our marriage, back in 1977. I look forward to the prospect of serving this district in the state assembly. And I want to say, if elected, I look forward to really serving the entire community of Cypress. And I've got very personal reasons to do so. Obviously, if you simply honor your oath of office, you can do that. And I will certainly do that. I have a long record in public service. I've served as a Rancho Grove City Council since my original election in 2002, 10 years. 2007, I was appointed by the governor to represent all the state cities on the State Side and Safety Commission. And in just 5 years, between 2004 and 2009, I rose to the top leadership of the League of California citywide. So I definitely understand how to serve in the public realm, how to be diligent in public service, and how to carry forward in my community. If I'm elected, I offer you really two outstanding skills. My private sector career goes back 2 decades, where I served as an advocate for business viewpoints here in California and nationwide, more than a dozen capitals. My job was really what I refer to as a smoke jumper, honoring the firefighters that jump out of airplanes. I'd get the call to go to a state where there was a challenge in the business environment, fly into that capital and address an issue. I'll just speak to the question on my 2 minutes.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead then, and we'll give you 2 minutes to respond to that.
I think for all the issues facing our state, it's not enough to say you're going to do something. You need to have a plan. The issue of how you invest in infill areas, which is a critical issue in ADA, is an issue that I've been working on for 5 years. I told you how, in a span of 5 short years, I went from being one of thousands of elected officials in California City statewide to the top tier of leadership in the League of California Cities, advanced there by my elected colleagues statewide. In every interview, as I went through that process, I said my top priority would be working on how we improve our ability to invest in infill areas of communities. This district has tremendous needs for infill investment, and the tool went away. So I have been working, building relationships with local elected officials, with the development community, with cattlemen, with insurance companies, with groups around California to focus on this issue of how we can bring back investment in inner city areas. In recent years, as a consultant of the State Senate, I actually worked to change legislation by Dave Jones that was a bad bill to turn it into a bill that could help support funding streams in infill areas where you have low and moderate income communities looking to bring investment into their midst. There has to be a collaborative discussion of all the parties at the table while we are working on bringing California back as a place to grow jobs. The reality is we are in our present trouble because businesses are afraid to invest in California. That's the challenge. I have 2 decades working in the private sector. I know CEOs and companies around the nation. Our challenge is to show them that the California legislature is grappling with the problems of the day so that it does not look so risky to come back to California and then bring their investment here so we can grow a better future, which will include infill areas where need is immense. Thank you.
For Ken, this is a little bit long, but I want you to listen to it because I think it's very important. The Prison Realignment Bill, AB 109, was implemented October 2011. If you compare the crime rate in Citrus Heights from January to July 2011 to the crime rate from January to July 2012, assaults are up 4%, with an overall 3% increase in all crimes against persons. Burglary has increased 5%, and vehicle theft has gone from an average of 25 per month in 2011 to 46 per month in 2012. The City Council put Measure K on the ballot for this November, in part as a response to the 109ers, as these new releases are called. What can be done to stop the state from the early release of convicted felons into our neighborhoods? Ken?
Well, I think at the end of the question, if we're going to stop the state, you have to change policy, which means you have to engage in debate at the state level. If you're going to change the state policy, that's what you need to do. You have to go and argue for that in the legislature, which means you have to have the ability to get inside the heads of those legislators. This is a very significant moment in the state because at the end of November, in the 80-member assembly, there will be 40 brand new members. So this is a time of convulsive change in the institution. And it's an opportunity for those members who now have 12 years to serve to redirect the whole character of the institution. So the first thing you do, you've got to have a debate inside the bill if you're going to change state policy. At the local level, I'm supported by the California Police Chiefs Association. Your own chief is active in that organization, I do believe. In our city, what we have done effectively in response to that state legislation is we've strengthened the partnerships between our code enforcement, our probation, and our own police department to stay on top of things in our community. And that collaboration in law enforcement and branch maneuver has helped us keep these numbers in check. So I think at the local level, we have to do everything we can, use every arrow in our quiver, put resources to kind of keep these adverse things in check. And then I think you have to focus on how do you find the money to incarcerate and preserve our system. The problem with just saying let's spend the money on a different goal, right now we do not have the money. We have to grow jobs in California. That is the critical need. We have to get in the heads of CEOs around the country to get them to realize that as the legislature changes with this infusion of new blood, that it's starting to grapple with the state's problems and it starts looking better to come invest in California. So we have to grow the engine of California jobs to help us work through some of these issues. But there are things you can do locally, and you can engage in that debate in the state legislature.
And we'll have 1 minute for further conclusion to that.
You know, this discussion sort of reminds me of an expression we use in our church, which is to live above with those we love, that will be glory. But to live below with those we know, well, that's a different story. Yeah. You know, it's easy to talk and just make dramatic statements. We will do this, we will do that. But we have to work within the world in which we are. And we have to have an ability to kind of discuss issues, deliberate upon them, try to fashion a solution while balancing an entire budget. To say we will just put money back in redevelopment means you've got to figure out how you're going to pay for schools, how you're going to pay for public safety, our prisons. We've got to figure out how we solve these complex things. And just to make a declaration doesn't solve the problem. Again, I think we've got to work on these issues, but I run as a 10-year elected official, a founder of my city, someone who, with thousands of city officials statewide, they took me right through the League of Cities because I'm collaborative, I focus on the problem, I know how to work with people, and that's because I spent 20 years nationwide as a business advocate, being a smoke jumper who would fly into a jurisdiction and take up a business viewpoint in a hostile audience.
The question is, what will you do to protect the Sacramento area water supply for current users and future development? You have a minute, and then another 2 minutes.
Well, I think the issue is you've got to focus on protecting our region. You've got to protect our interests, and I've been doing that as an elected official. In the League of California Cities, when I was early in the league process, chair of the Housing Committee, Economic Development Committee, I served on the flood committee to how do we protect our region against flood, because that can contaminate the water supply. I was on the infrastructure committee looking on how you pay for the sorts of infrastructure that will protect all of our communities. When the Sacramento Regional Water Quality Control Board was imposing the ammonia penalty on Sacramento, I was out as the mayor in my city testifying on behalf of our region that they should not do that. You have to stand up for the interests that matter. You've got to be prepared to make your argument, to push, to not roll over, and This is a very important issue, not just for the cities, but for the southern part of our county. Wilton, Harold, Clay. These are all areas that are very rural. They need this water, and they need a champion to stand up to them.
If there's more, 2 minutes more to discuss the water issues.
Again, I will just say the issue that we face in this election, I am so excited to run because I will bring a type of background that will make me a standout freshman in this class of 40. I've had a lot of support. I have support from the mortgage industry, insurance industry, from the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, the companies that bring in the great fleets to our coast to bring commerce here. I'm supported by the California Small Business Association. I'm supported by a big tent of backers who have seen me grow my career since my original election in 2002. They've seen me rise in leadership at the state level in organizations filled with other politicians, for heaven's sakes. How do you grow leadership and get a following when you're in an organization of thousands of elected leaders? Well, you do it by being skillful, collaborative, a good advocate for the future that keeps focused on the problem at hand. So I just believe that I am running not just to only represent our district, but to be a change agent in the institutional legislature, to be a freshman of a caliber that this state capitol has not seen in 20 years, to be impactful amid that 40-member new group, to change the way they understand what the legislature is about, and to get them individually focused on our future. We have seen under term limits a shrinking of members so many members sit on the sidelines so the speaker calls upon them to take on a vote. I see a need for us to get this motor with 120 cylinders focusing on all 120 cylinders. And I'm running with my background as elected official to be that change agent. And that will impact issues like water and redevelopment and crime.
Thank you. I'm going to change the rules real quick because we're towards the end of our time. I have 2 more questions left that I'd like to have addressed. I'd like them to have about 90 seconds each to address these 2 questions and then have their conclusions. So the first question, actually, let's make this one 2 minutes because it's far more complex than anything else. Proposition 30 is the sales and income tax increase. What is your position on Prop 30, and what will you cut if it fails? We'll have 2 minutes for each of them to answer that question.
Well, the one thing we know about these sorts of things, every big idea. The one thing we know about all these big issues is they have lots of nuances. The electricity reform bill was passed when Gray Davis was governor. People thought it was a simple idea and it proved to be a disaster. I support the idea of going to the voters to ask them their views on this tax increase. I absolutely support that. In my city, we view our residents as partners in our city's future. Many times, me and my council members have put matters before our voters to see what their take is on it. And I actually think that's part of the partnership of democracy. It's part of what we honor today in this solemn remembrance of what happened in an assault on our society. If we don't have the money, we're going to have to figure out what we do with services provided by counties because they are the most important client of the state in terms of their services they provide. We'll have to look at health and human services, which is a big area of need. We have to pay for education. Education is the most important investment to our future after infrastructure that supports commerce. Because I can assure you, CEOs will not be bringing their investment to California if they do not see an educated workforce. You know, my CEO at State Farm, Ed Rust, he can figure out how to put a price tag on the tax expense of working in California so he can build it into their product. He can figure out how to put a price tag on the regulatory environment in California to put in their product. But if they don't have an educated workforce, they're not going to put their money in the state, and that's true throughout the economy. So we cannot cut education. So we're going to have to cut other places, and it will be a great deal of unpleasantness, to say the least.
Thank you.
I will support it. I'll even argue for it. But I do believe it is right. We need in our country to focus everybody on our future.
All right, the last The last formal question is going to be, what should California's energy policy look like? You will get 2 minutes each to answer this, and then we'll have our conclusions after this question. So, here we go. Energy policy, California's energy policy.
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say we should have policies which actually release energy, not in the sense of oil or gas, but we should have policies that release investment in energy, bringing energy here, innovation. So I support efforts to promote green energy, but we need to have policies across the board that really release our energy. There's a great essay by a guy named Millard Hurst who wrote about America in the 1880s, that it was a time of a blossoming of law changes that he saw as releasing energy and helped spur the economy to great dynamism. That's what we need in California. We need a legislature that's focused on the future, that's focused on growing jobs, that is listening to CEOs to figure out what is it that holds back a CEO of a Fortune 500 corporation from coming into California. We need to be sitting down with Alan Zernberg at the State Chamber and Jack Stewart at the California Manufacturing Technology Association. We need to be talking to the oil and gas guys. We need to talk to all of them. What are the barriers you see? And how do we take those and fix those so that you can start deciding now is the time to come back to California? Again, my whole career has been, as I said, is that funny phrase, a smoke jumper. My job was to go into a hostile environment and carry forward a business argument in the face of resistance and not give ground. I'm very collegial. That's what the story of the League of Cities tells you. But I will not roll over in the face of the need to move my future forward. I have 2 boys. One is in seminary, one is a youth pastor. On a weekly basis, I have kids in my house worried in their little prayer circle about how they're going to get their classes, how they're going to get their jobs, where their life is going. That is who I am running to serve. And we have to take on that battle.
Thank you. Ken?
Well, I want to say it's an honor to be with you here today, and I look forward to the prospect of being able to serve you in the State Assembly. I've had a chance to share my views, so now I want to share my heart, so you can kind of understand how I will work for you. My favorite building downtown is not the state capitol. It's what we used to call Office Building 1 across the street. If you had the opportunity, as early Californians did, to build the first state office building, the question you could ask yourself is, what would you put in the granite as a lesson to posterity? What they put in the granite was, bring me men, which we know means people, to match my mountains. When both of my sons graduated from high school, I took them with me for a day into the mountains. We went up above Donner Lake before I could show them where, in 1844, the Townsend Stevens Murphy Party came into California. They had to ford the river 24 times coming up there. They had to drive the oxen up the stream when the shoulders ran out. They had to push them up the cliff at the end of the west end of Donner Lake. They had to surmount a cliff. They had to carry their wagons physically over that cliff. I will work hard. This is my vision of what it takes to build a future. We are in mountains in our era. We will only accomplish it by working hard together to surmount the obstacles in front of us. That is my pledge.